And we are off. Fantastic. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, for staying with us. I hope you enjoyed the breakout session that we had the sessions that we had earlier, the amazing campaign manager panel. Thank you so much, Kira, our head of campaigns. Liz, as always, your messaging advice is so great and fantastic. And for those of you joining us, I'm Gaby Goldstein. I'm one of our co-founders here at Sister District. And to close out the programming for this summit, it is an absolute delight to moderate a panel discussion about a topic that I know is very close to all of our hearts, which is the political landscape in Virginia. And I'm joined by 4 experts who could not be closer to the action in Virginia than they are. We have Tram Win, who is the co-executive director of New Virginia Majority. She's a brilliant and tireless organizer and advocate and an incredible leader in Virginia. And New Virginia Majority is incredible, the year-round organizing that they do across the state. So we're absolutely thrilled to have Tram with us. We have Andrew Whalen, who's Senior Director for Eastern United States for State and Local Campaigns for Emily's List, one of the absolute smartest minds in campaigns and truly a treasured collaborator of mine. We have Virginia Delegate Joshua Cole, who we were so incredibly proud to support in 2019 when his win helped flip the lower chamber, and who has accomplished so very much in the legislature already. And finally, we have Jaime Reimers, who is the executive director of the Virginia House Democratic Caucus. And some folks on this call, I'm sure, remember a senator from Michigan by the name of Winnie Brinks. And so you'll know Jaime from her time as Winnie's campaign manager. And she's a great friend of the organization and so excited to have her in this new role in Virginia. So just a quick agenda. I'm going to spend just a moment setting the stage about Virginia, just a quick recap of where we've been and where we're going. And then I'll ask each of our panelists to kick us off by spending a couple minutes introducing themselves, their organizations, and their plans for Virginia this year. And then we'll dive into a panel conversation about a few key topics that I know are on everyone's minds. First, redistricting and its impact and its process and what's going on. And then elections. What are the goals for this year? What's at stake in Virginia and how are things going? So we'll try for Q&A. Please feel free to put your questions in the chat as we go. We'll do our best. If we don't get to everyone's questions, I apologize. But that's the plan for the next hour. So just to set the stage a little bit, as many of you know, this will be Sister District's 3rd cycle working to help build progressive power in Virginia's state legislature. Back in 2017, our very first year as an organization, we endorsed a slew of candidates and built our field and fundraising ships as we sailed them and helped Dems pick up 15 seats, bringing the chamber within just striking distance of flipping. And we all still have Shelley Simons on our minds for how we didn't quite get to parity that year. 2019, we came back and did our part to help Democrats and help our friends in Virginia flip those chambers, both chambers, and deliver that beautiful blue trifecta. And so we're so excited to be back this year to help protect it, expand it, the majority in the legislature, and of course that trifecta, which is so vital. And this work that we're doing and what Virginia is doing, we are seeing the power of state legislatures in real time. And every day of this session is an absolute delight. And on Friday, it was no exception. I hope everyone saw that the Virginia legislature voted to become the first state in the South to abolish the death penalty. And I'll let Delegate Cole tell us more about what it's been like on the ground. But, thinking back to Anat's keynote yesterday, we heard Anat Shankar-Asario tell us about how we have to talk about what we're for, not just what we're against. And I think Virginia gives as progressives. And we know that it didn't happen overnight, right? It takes years of year-round organizing, often led by people of color, to build the infrastructure and lay the groundwork for the electoral victories that happened in Virginia. And we saw that last year in Georgia and Arizona as well, with the power of organizations like Fair Fight and New Georgia Project and Lucha in Arizona, and so many others. So it takes all of it, right? It takes the political strategy, the grassroots strategy, campaign strategy, organizing, inspired candidates, and it all has to come together to get where we're going. So it's absolutely incredible to have our panelists here, each of whom and their organizations play such a critical role in Virginia's successes. And so with that, it's my pleasure to kick things off. Let's just start out by having our folks introduce themselves, say a little bit about yourselves and your organizations and how you're planning to engage in Virginia this year. And so we can just go in alphabetical order. So that would be Delegate Cole, then Tram, Jaime, and Andrew.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm so excited to join with you all, my sister district family. I'm Delegate Joshua Cole. Through much help of you all, I can call myself that now. And I'm honored to represent the 28th House District. And as you all are aware, this is re-election campaign. So we're excited to kick up the gears as soon as we finish with this session that we're in now, to hit the campaign trail hard, making sure people understand the great work we've done in Virginia. And consider this, all the great work we've done, there's still some other great things we have to keep on doing. So we have to maintain our majorities and keep fighting.
Hello, everyone. Tram Win. I'm co-executive director of New Virginia Majority. For folks who don't know, our organization is a statewide civic engagement and advocacy organizing organization that has been in Virginia since 2007. I helped to start the organization was its first full-time staff, so it seems like an eon ago. Our whole theory of change is around engaging a more diverse set of folks, that, you know, if we get folks off the sidelines and into the arena voting and holding their elected officials accountable, then we can truly transform Virginia. I'm a lifelong Virginian, except for a brief stint in college in New York. But growing up here in Virginia in the South, like I remember in first grade folks saying in front of me whether I was Black or whether I was white, because there weren't many folks that, you know, didn't fall neatly into those boxes. And that wasn't that long ago, and at the time it was like 1% of Virginians was foreign born. And you fast forward to today, and that's like 1 in 7 Virginians. But we also know that demographics isn't destiny. And that's why, you know, over the last almost 15 years now, we have done the hard work of creating long-term, year-round political homes for people so they can feel like they are a part of a system, and that they can transform the system when it's not working for them. And so have been deeply privileged and honored to work with so many of you all and the folks in Virginia to transform the state to where it is today. And so happy to be here with you all. Thank you.
Hey everybody, Jaime Reimers. As Gaby said, I am the executive director of the Virginia House Democratic Caucus. It is my job this year to get all the wonderful delegates like Delegate Cole reelected, and to make sure that we hold on to the majority here in the House of Delegates in Virginia. I'm a native Michigander. I was born and raised in Metro Detroit, worked all over that state, and then took my skills out to Colorado last year, where I helped to defend and expand the Democratic majority in their state Senate. And then made my way back east. And I am happy to be here in Virginia. I'm excited at the opportunities we have. And I've been hearing great things about the Democrats in Virginia, and I'm really excited to be a part of it this year.
So fantastic. And Jaime, we had Senator Faith Winter on a panel yesterday. And so I know all your great work in Colorado and now coming to Virginia. It's wonderful. So fantastic. Thank you all so much. So let's chat a little bit about redistricting. I know it's a topic on all of our minds in different ways. And so Jaime, maybe you could just give us a little bit of grounding. What is there's a new process this year. Where are we in the process? Oh my gosh, I skipped over Andrew. How did I do that? I am so sorry. Please.
Don't worry, Gabby. I will just make you remember that for the rest of the cycle, I promise. Thanks. No, thanks for everyone for being here. I am Andrew Whalen, the Senior Director for State and Local Campaigns, and then I handle the races in Virginia directly. Emily's list, as you probably know, is traditionally been really engaged at the federal and gubernatorial level, but after the 2016 elections, we really made a concerted effort to make a larger investment and do more support for our state and local races. And so we have been working hand in hand with so many of you, certainly with Sister District and New Virginia and the House Caucus in 2017 to make those tremendous gains, and then in 2019 to take the majority in both chambers. And we are really excited to keep that House majority now in 21. And the work we do is everything from identifying and recruiting candidates to run. Pro-choice Democratic women candidates, obviously, to run. And then once we have those women in the races, supporting their campaigns, helping build finance plans and budgets, and kind of really mentoring the campaign staff and kind of being a source of support for the candidates from the time they make the decision right up through their time in the legislature. So thanks for having us. Gabby, sorry, we'll throw it back to redistricting now.
I apologize, Andrew. I love you. Thank you so much. So yes, redistricting, it's so much on my mind that I had to skip forward. So Jaime, we know there's a new process. Could you tell us a little bit about it, where we are in the process, and what the next steps are?
Yeah, absolutely. So last year, Virginia voters voted on a new way of redistricting, and so of drawing the maps. And so this year, redistricting is going to be done by a commission. And that commission is made up of half elected officials and half citizens. The elected officials are all members of the legislature here, half Republican, half Democrat, half from the Senate, half from the House. And then the citizens applied and went through a selection process, and half were selected by Republicans and half were selected by Democrats. So it's a bipartisan commission. Right now, they've had their first meeting. All of their meetings are public. And of course, because of COVID, they're not in person public. They are all streamed live on the internet for anyone to see. So if you're really that interested, anyone anywhere can tune in to see what the commission's doing. Right now, essentially, they are just sort of figuring out how everything is going to work. There's a lot of things, because this is the first time, that they have to lay out as far as how things are going to work within the commission. And also, we don't have data yet. So they can't actually be doing anything with that data. So right now they're learning about the redistricting process. They're learning about the various tools and resources they have at their disposal, and essentially waiting for the Census Bureau to send the data that they need. So that's really where we're at. And then as far as next steps, we really can't take any official steps until we know when that data is coming. And when the data itself arrives, it's going to be like a 2 to 5 month process, we're estimating, just to draw the maps, get the maps through the legislative approval process, and then turn those maps over to the election officials, who then have to do all of the sort of really hard data processing and redrawing that's going to be required to run an efficient and well-run election cycle. So the latest we've heard is that it's going to be a while. And so we're on our end of things, just figuring out what this process is going to look like and how we are going to navigate this as sort of the first in the nation to face this issue. But for now, everybody's sort of just paying attention and hoping we get something in writing soon from the Census Bureau as far as when we can expect that data that we're going to need to draw the maps.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. It's not just Virginia. Everyone, all the states are facing this issue, but it is just Virginia and New Jersey, I suppose, and I think New Jersey, that has to deal with this imminently. And so, Jaime, is your thought that we are likely running on the current maps for this year, or is that a decision that still needs to be made, or what can you share with us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So no official decision has been made. Obviously, there's a lot of different people in different places that have to, make that decision for us. But just logistically speaking, if we look at what's entailed in redistricting and what we've heard so far from the Census Bureau, the Census Bureau came out not this past week, but the week before, and said that we're unlikely to get data until at the earliest the end of July. If our process then takes 2 to 5 months, we're not talking about pushing the general election. We're talking about the primary election. We're talking about getting the signatures required to get on that primary ballot. And so really, if we're not getting data until the end of July and we're not moving the November election, we can't have a primary in October and a general in November. So just logistically speaking, we're all sort of coming to the consensus that it's likely not going to be new maps this year for us to run on, but then that also brings about additional challenges that we might have to face later. But like I said, there's a lot of people who have to make those decisions. I don't get to make them, unfortunately, but we are staying in touch with everyone and doing our best to navigate a way forward that really works for all involved.
Excellent. That's all we can ask. That's all we can do. And so this commission, the new commission, it was a bit controversial. And I'm curious for some thoughts about, why it was controversial and how it's kind of playing out. So Delegate Cole, perhaps you could share with us your thoughts about the commission and the controversy around it.
So this was very interesting. I was one of the few members of the caucus that were, we're going to pass this. We're going to get this constitutional amendment through. It's going to be great. And then when I got in the session, I was like, wait, hold up. Wait a minute. Okay, everybody, let's have a come to Jesus talk, because this is not what we thought this was going to be. And there was a couple different things. Many of us campaigned on an independent redistricting commission. And throughout the year, we kept saying, take us, the legislators, out of the process. Make a third-party independent commission that will handle the redrawing of the maps, and we shouldn't be involved at all. And so when we started really looking at this commission, and there were some people who voted on it who were in the legislature in 2019. But then again, as we came into 2020, we were like, this is not what we were campaigning on. This is as Jaime eloquently described it, a bipartisan commission. This is bringing legislators and citizens together. We just wanted this to be citizen-led. And so as we edged closer and closer and closer, many of us decided, well, we're going to educate people so they understand the importance of an independent redistricting commission. So there were a couple of different things, and I think Tram could really articulate it a lot better than I can. But one of the major things for us was, one, it was not independent. We wanted to ensure the protections for communities of color, and we wanted to make sure that everybody had protections as we move forward. And a lot of the legislation surrounding the constitutional amendment were just that. It was legislation as guardrails. They were not written in the constitutional amendment themselves. So we were like, we'll pass this. We'll be good for 2021. But what happens when 2031 comes around and those pieces of legislation, which are guardrails, are not in the amendment? Whoever has control in 2030 can change the legislation and change the guardrails for whatever they want it to be. And so we tried to let people know, but there was a lot of money that came in. There was a lot of people who pushed for this. And I still think there were some people who really didn't understand the importance of having the legislation in the constitutional amendment. And so I guess I'll turn it over to Tram. Tram was on the ground, and they did some great work. So she can articulate it better than I could.
You did great, Delegate Cole. That was a great articulation of some of the issues. I mean, at the end of the day, when we're talking about amending our Constitution, it is a really big deal. For folks who aren't aware of the constitutional amendment process in Virginia, it's a multi-year process. It takes passage in 2 General Assembly sessions with an election in between before it goes on the ballot. And usually the General Assembly only wants 2 amendments at any given time. And so you're competing against a bunch of things. So it's a really big deal. And I think there was a question in the chat about how hard is it to reverse. Put it this way. We are just in the year 2021, about to reverse a constitutional amendment that was that passed Virginia in 2006, the Marshall-Newman Amendment that bans gay marriage in Virginia. That is from 2006 to 2021, right? 2021, we are just trying to reverse it now. And so for a lot of us, when we think about enshrining something in our Constitution, we want to make sure that it's right. And I think to Delegate Cole's point, the fact that legislators are still baked in to this commission, the fear, which I did watch, Jaime, that first redistricting commission, because I'm a nerd and I do these things. And we were nervous that legislators would basically overtake the commission and drown out the voices of the citizen commissioners, and that this would really just not be as fair of a process as it might look on paper. And so that's kind of what is playing out. But of course, we're going to do a lot of public engagement to make sure that this commission is held accountable, because let's face it, this is what we have now, right? So we have this, and we're going to have to make it work. And we're going to have to make sure that our community voices are heard and are, taken into account throughout this entire redistricting process. So.
Absolutely. And Tram, that's a perfect segue to the next question, which is, what are the ways that the public can be involved in the process to ensure that it's fair and to ensure that their voices are being heard?
So I can start, and then if others want to chime in. So some of the things that we're going to do is we have started, and we started this in 2019, just making sure that no matter who draws the maps, whether the commission or the legislature, that we were going to be prepared and our community members would be prepared. And so we have been going into communities. I know with COVID, it's a little bit different now, but we have we have the mapping and the licenses and the software, and we have actually been getting communities to try to identify their own communities of interest, right? Like, how do you define, where your shared interests are and who makes up your community? And it's been fascinating to me to get that feedback, because some assumptions that we make, like in that process, right, are just completely dispelled. And so I think that that's going to be a part of it, is like, how do we have some community map making to get that direct input? As Delegate Cole and Jaime mentioned, these commission meetings are all open to the public. People can sign up. So we're going to, once the meeting agendas get into the good stuff versus like some of the introductory stuff, we're going to make sure that our folks are signed up to provide public comment. In the 2011 cycle, the map making cycle, and even the federal cases that challenge these maps in between, we have submitted our own maps on the record as part of amicus briefs and as part of the whole process. So we're just gonna do everything we can to make sure that these voices are heard.
And thank you for that work. It's so incredibly important. And so this process, this redistricting process and, sort of situation, I'm sure it's creating some opportunities, but also some challenges in terms of being able to run, right? I mean, you kind of need to know where you live, what district you live in, to be able to decide if you're going to run for office. And the timelines are a little strange. And so, Andrew, I'd be so curious for your perspective about how things are going in terms of candidate recruitment, and whether the delays that we're seeing in the process this year because of redistricting are creating challenges or opportunities for stepping up to run.
Yeah, it's really a great question. I think almost thankfully, we had a similar-ish circumstances in 2019 when we were waiting on the courts to redraw maps to undo some egregious racial gerrymandering, that we kind of got some experience under our belts of saying, this is what we think these districts are roughly going to be, and identifying candidates in those regions if we weren't 100% sure that they were actually going to be in the districts that were official in the general election. And so I think we've all taken a similar approach to Jamie's earlier point, that we're mildly confident that we're going to be running on these same lines. We're seeing tremendous candidates stepping up across the state. I know this panel is working remarkably hard to fill some of those remaining districts, and that it's not to me, at least, I haven't seen it hindering anybody's desire to step up and serve. I mean, when you look at whether it's Delegate Cole's success, or the success that we've had taking back this majority, we now have examples that we can point to that people thinking about running for office can see themselves serving in the House of Delegates now, whether it's Delegate Cole up in Fredericksburg, or somebody like Alex Askew down in Virginia Beach, who used to work for me, on a campaign, which makes me feel magnificently old, and now he's actually serving in a legislative body. Sally Hudson out in Charlottesville, they can see these people that represent themselves, that they're energized and ready to jump into these races and run. It's really, really exciting.
That's fantastic. And, we worked with Alex as well, and he is beloved here as well. And it has been so incredible to see such a representative democracy really blossom in Virginia, particularly compared to so many other legislatures. And so it's good to know that despite this strange kind of timing situation that we're dealing with this year, there are still folks stepping up to run, and that the process is generally working as it should in terms of that. So thank you for all you're doing, Andrew, to help amazing women step up and run. It's a good segue to talk about the elections. And so given the fact that, this year may be somewhat of an interstitial year between the current maps and future maps, I'm curious what the goals are electorally of the party this year. Jaime, maybe you can tell us a little bit about what your perspective is about the electoral goals of the Democratic Party this year.
So, I mean, at the end of the day, our goal is to keep the majority in the House and keep the statewide in Democratic hands. Like, at the end of the day, that is the be-all, end-all goal. Within that, there are other goals. So, if we could expand our majority in the House, give ourselves a bit more breathing room, that would be phenomenal. We think there are still areas where we can grow. But then also, I think there's just so many unknowns this year that really we're trying to get a feel for not just what we have to deal with this year, but what's coming down the pike. There's been a lot of history making, to put it kindly, in the last 4 years. And so I think to a certain extent, we're trying to get a feel for where activism is, where engagement is, now that the boogeyman is out of the White House, but as we all know, likely not gone. Let's be real. This whole side of the country has been exposed as well. So, what's going on with the Republican Party is going to have a really interesting effect on the electorate as well. And so trying to navigate the pitfalls of all of that, trying to keep engagement and activism, which has been at such a great high for the past couple cycles, at that level, or at least close to it, is going to be crucial for us. And so finding a way to keep everybody interested and involved and keep us growing, and so we can keep doing all of this work. I mean, Delegate Cole can really detail it more so than me, but there have been amazing things happening in this session. Like you mentioned the death penalty. Let's talk about all of the different things, like eliminating mandatory minimums. Let's talk about legalizing marijuana. Let's talk about getting rid of the gay and trans panic defense. I mean, there is great work happening in Virginia, and we've got a lot more to do. And so it's about figuring out how to talk to people. Now that Trump is sort of out over there, how do we have that conversation, and how do we now as a majority talk to people and keep them engaged and let them know that the fight's not over and our majority, while great, is not safe? Yeah,
Exactly. What we're for, not just what we're against, but really making that case about what we're for and why we're for it. Tram, Delegate Cole, do you have thoughts about, the general electoral goals that you're looking at for this year?
I can jump in real quick. And I think we first have to underscore the importance of maintaining the majority. Because I think we say that and we get excited, oh, keep the majority, keep Speaker Fillicorn in. But when we realize the work that we'll be able to get accomplished with maintaining our majority, having the Senate and keeping that Democratic trifecta, if we were to lose, God forbid, we lose the majority in November, imagine the halting and the stalling that's going to be in Virginia. We'll say a Democratic governor and a Democratic Senate, but God forbid, a Republican House of Delegates. There's going to be a lot of stalling and a lot of things that may not get through. It'll pass in the House and it'll get stalled or changed or revamped in the Senate. And they may send it up to the governor and the governor may veto it or write something different. So there's a lot of that that's in stake. We still have a lot of work to do. From my area here in Fredericksburg, we still have a lot to do with funding for roads, funding for infrastructure and transportation revamping. There's so much that we still have left to do, that we have to maintain this majority. And that's what's key for many people to understand. I was, thinking about what am I going to campaign on in 2021, because literally everything I campaigned on in 2019, we did it. So I'm trying to figure out, well, what the heck am I going to campaign on? But the truth of the matter is we now go on, even, we've been on offense, but now it's time to go on defense, because we know what happens after a presidential election. Whoever is the party in control, if that party is in control on the state level, typically we could lose it. Maybe I'm uber optimistic, but I really believe that what has happened over these past 4 years, people have been awakened. They now understand the importance of state legislatures. We have so many different civic organizations in Fredericksburg that we never had 4 years ago. And they've been blowing my phone up and emailing us, all right, what do we do? I'm in session, just give me a few weeks, we'll be ready to go. They're ready to get involved. And so, maybe I'm uber optimistic. I really believe that while this year is going to be tough, we're going to have to put up some fights. I really believe we will still maintain our majority as long as we have the messaging that people need to hear. We are putting up the fight for COVID-19. We are protecting people. We are getting the vaccine out. We want to make sure that our teachers are protected and our parents and our kids are protected. Not only that, but when everything is going down, we're protecting small businesses and we're making sure that those who have been let go are getting the money they need from unemployment. We are doing the good work. And when you put the Democrats in control, great things happen. And, when we first took control, there was a news article that came out and said, the Democrats are not ready for prime time. Well, we have showed that we're ready for prime time and that we know how to lead and we can continue to lead. And the people in Virginia, I believe, will trust in us for that.
I'll just add that I have had to lobby and advocate in Virginia under a Republican trifecta, under a Republican governor, and a Democratic majority in the Senate. And I mean, I've seen every scenario. And I cannot tell you, I can't overstate enough, what has been achieved because of this Democratic trifecta for the people of Virginia has been tremendous. In the first year under the trifecta last year in 2020, before COVID and all of that, I mean, our organization's agenda alone, we passed 60 bills. Unheard of, right? These are things that have been on our list for years, and 60 of them passed. And I thought we were done too, Delegate Cole, but you know what? There's plenty of things to do, because this year we have 40 bills that are going through. I was like, oh shoot, we passed 60, we're done. And, but it's just, I've lost track of how many first in the South achievements we have made this session so far. I mean, Jaime mentioned a couple of them, but we're going to be the first state in the South to pass a comprehensive state voting rights act, which we all know that our democratic institutions are fragile and they're under attack, and we're having state level remedies for it that's unheard of. I mean, someone from California called me and was like, your state voting rights act is actually good, it's better than ours. And I was like, well, of course it is. We put in the work. We were able to pass some things. So I can't there's so much at stake. And I think to the point that was made around letting voters know not only what's at stake, but that they can actually make the difference, right? And that we shouldn't be afraid of any backlash. I mean, if you think about last year's election, We were in the middle of an 84-day special session that went right through like September, October, leading right up into the November election. And Virginians were paying attention like they never had before because of COVID and because of the Black lives, the marches, the protests were happening. And, you know, Delegate Cole and his colleagues passed one of the most progressive law enforcement accountability and transparency packages in our history, frankly. We passed Breonna Taylor's law, like the first one in the country to actually name it after Breonna Taylor. And I would say that if there was going to be any backlash against Democrats for doing these things, we would have seen it in November, but instead what we saw was Joe Biden and Kamala Harris had a 10-point lead in Virginia, right? And like our Democratic congressional delegation got sent back to DC. The margins were not 10 points, but they were running in districts that were never drawn for them. They were running in Republican districts that were gerrymandered. So like, keep that in mind, right? And yet we still sent them all back to DC. So I do think that we've made our case to Virginians and to the people. And I do think that we can continue to do so this election cycle and hold on to our victories and hold on to our trifecta, and because people know what's at stake.
1,000%. And I mean, Virginia, I think, you know, Jaime, you may have alluded to this, but is often a bellwether for what the next year is going to look like all across the country because of the odd year elections. And so keeping folks engaged and doubling down on the progressive values and policies that have already been put in place and having a roadmap for what still needs to be done is absolutely critical in making that case for why the elections this year are so important. And so what is the re-elect looking like? Delegate Cole, Andrew, I'm so curious how things are looking on the ground as candidates are starting to rev up campaign life and get that ball rolling.
Delegate, I'll defer to you, and then I'll go from there.
Well, I can give a limited insight. I've been so focused on session, but I've seen so many great candidates that have popped up all over the state. And we haven't even seen many who've announced that are going to announce soon. With Reverend Raphael Warnock winning as a leftist Democrat in a traditionally state, I've seen so many pastors that have reached out to me and said, hey, I didn't want to run as a Democrat, but now I'm ready to go. How can I do it? You did it. There's 3 other pastors with you in the House Democratic Caucus. What can we do? And so we're seeing people who are motivated and excited to run. We're seeing, you know, mothers who are excited to run. We're seeing farmers who are excited to run. We have people who are running in deep red districts who are labeling themselves as conservative Democrats who want to fight, you know, for people. And so we're seeing people from all over the state that are really to come out and run. And I'm really excited about it because we want to see every seat challenge that we haven't touched before. And I think I heard the other day that there's a Republican seat in the Richmond suburbs that hasn't been challenged since like the early 2000s that now has a Democratic candidate that has just filed to run. And so we're excited to hear all of this. I think that this might be a tough year. I'm still nervous on my side. I don't have an opponent either way yet. And that makes me nervous because, you know, our seat was the seat of the Republican Speaker of the House for, you know, for 30 years. So we know there's somebody out there, but we're just waiting to see what they're going to do. But we have to make sure that our messaging is key. We are here fighting for the people. We are here protecting democracy. We are here looking out for the average working citizen. And that's what got us to win this majority. That's what's going to continue to help us hold this majority. And even though we're running on these old districts and it may seem uncertain as it is right now, you know, people put us here and people trust us. And I'm getting emails from people every day, you know, people who say, we can't believe you're doing this. We can't wait to vote you out. But they're outnumbered by the emails from people who are saying, thank you so much for all that you're doing. We never thought we would see this in Virginia. We're excited that it's a new day in Virginia. And as I stated on election night, it's a new day in Old Dominion. And a lot of people are really excited to see that. And I'm excited because, like I said, I'm uber optimistic. I think that we'll keep fighting, we'll keep the majority, and people will begin to see that the Democratic Party is the party of the people.
No, and I would just echo everything the delegate said. I think, you know, we are cautiously optimistic. I won't quite go that I'm as optimistic as the delegate, but then again, I get paid to be a long-tailed cat in a room full of rocking chairs. So I think, as I look though at the incumbents that we have, they've all been through the fight. They were winning tough elections in 2017, or losing tough close elections in 2017, and then coming back and winning those in 2019. They have been through this. They've kept the campaign apparatus alive. And to Tram's earlier point, and the delegate made this point too, we're not just saying elect us, this is what we're going to do, that we're now saying re-elect us because we've done all of this. And that is just a great thing to be able to point to. And then I know there was a question in the chat earlier about kind of some of these districts, especially Candy King's seat, HD2, the old Jennifer Carroll Foy seat. It was remarkably close, I think, closer than any of us would have wished. But I think a lot of that had to do with just the timing of it. It was, right after the new year, early mail-in ballots were dropping during the Christmas and New Year's holiday. It was a very low turnout election. I am optimistic that that seat will be a little bit more comfortable for us in an actual general election. That being said, we do have a number of seats that the caucus, certainly sister district, New Virginia, everyone has been involved in winning in 2017. You think of Delegate Guzman's seat or Delegate Ayala's seat, and kind of, as we look to November, asking what those seats look like without those members there. They're going to be tough holds and tough fights, I think, but we're going into it knowing that, and the candidates that are running there are strong, and we're not taking those seats for granted. We didn't take the re-elections for granted in 2019, and I think that's how we're looking at 21. Is we're running into those seats knowing that it's going to be tough and that we're going to have to do everything, field paid communications, that it's going to take a full suite of campaign efforts to hold those seats, but we do know where they are and we're going to go get them.
Yeah, and there's a question that came through the chat that's somewhat related, which is that it would be helpful to have some insight into the effect that the governor's race is going to have on the elections, particularly since there are two very qualified and fantastic Black women running. We have a number of other folks running, and several of whom are currently delegates or other electeds. And how does that play in there? You mentioned Delegate Ayala and Delegate Guzman, both of whom are also running for higher office. How does that play out in terms of the political landscape for candidate recruitment, for the timing of elections, and for the general approach with voters? Very curious for perspectives open to the panel.
I guess I'll take first run at this. So for me personally, my focus is entirely the House. Being the executive director of the caucus, my entire goal is to keep all of these seats and maybe snag a couple more. So for me, there is I think I saw something that said, more incumbent legislators are running for higher office this year than in any previous year, which means I have quite a few seats that I need to keep an eye on. But it also, whenever there are open seats, we have to worry about candidate recruitment. If it's, a competitive primary, then I have to, sit on my hands and wait until that primary is over, which gives me a little bit of heartburn. But, I have lots of other seats I can focus on in the meantime. But, I think for me, and that's why I'm going first, I'm focused on the House. And so, I think thankfully in any other year, I think there would be a lot more focus being taken away from the House to focus on these primaries at the statewide level. But I think with the amount of activism and engagement we've seen with people waking up to how important the legislature is, I'm not as concerned about that this year as I might have been like 5-10 years ago. I think nobody is taking their eye off of all of the prizes. So, while there are a lot of groups that don't engage in primaries, a lot of them are going to be turning their attention to helping the delegate races in the meantime. I know there are some orgs that do engage in primaries, and they can feel free to do that. But for us, I'm all about making sure we get qualified, really great candidates with great stories into those districts so we can hold on to them. And I wish all of my members luck as they pursue higher office.
I think what's so amazing is the importance of making sure you have candidates that run in their districts, that know their districts and know their people. In 2017, while we may have lost the race, we still outperformed the governor by 400 plus votes. And so that's key, to make sure you have candidates in the district that can run and know that district. And so that's going to be important as well. Yes, the governor, whoever our candidate is going to be after June, is going to be important. Yes, it's going to be the top ticket person that's going to motivate more people to come out, but also your candidates that are running in Fredericksburg, that are running in Roanoke, that are running in Staunton, that are running in Virginia Beach, they have to, I'm a preacher, so they have to preach the message or run on the message that's going to motivate their people to show up to the polls. And so I'm really excited to see all of the candidates. I have so many friends that are running for higher office. And I think I saw the question down there, how would that affect? And if I'm not mistaken, we did some research, and they are still allowed to run for their House of Delegates seat and run for higher office at the same time. I think as of right now, only one has only focused on higher office. So she's already endorsed her successor in Woodbridge, but many of them are still running for their House of Delegate seats and whatever higher office they're running for as well.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think you're probably speaking about Delegate Ayala, who has made that decision to endorse a successor and focus on the lieutenant governor's race. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that, I think that makes a lot of sense. The pie is not finite in terms of people's attention or energy. If there are these really exciting primaries going on, that shouldn't take away from the energy and enthusiasm for folks to maintain control of the lower chamber too. We can chew gum and walk at the same time, which makes a ton of sense. And so, in terms of the thinking about sort of the situation on the ground, I'm so curious what the coalition looks like. I know we have folks on our call right now who are part of grassroots organizations in Virginia. Of course, all of you have a different seat at all the tables. The Venn diagram is very complex when it comes to these pieces, but really curious from your perspective, is the coalition that's come together to support candidates and maintain that enthusiasm and turn it out, does it look healthy? Is it looking solid for this year, both at the national level? Andrew, thinking about Emily's list and the ways that national organizations work together, as well as at the grassroots level, Tram, thinking about the way that local groups work together as well. So maybe Andrew, maybe you would share a national perspective, and then Tram, if you could share the Virginia local perspective.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to. I think that over the last several cycles, I think we've seen really good partnership with national organizations like Emily's List, or kind of sister district coming in, and then just the partnership, I think, is the really important part between those national organizations with the work we're doing specifically in Virginia on the ground with all of our Virginia partners. It's really, to me, working in a number of states and overseeing campaigns across the nation, it really isn't, I think, the best example of where everybody comes together to pull on the rope in the same direction, that we all see the same goal. And while I'm just down 95 in North Carolina, the Commonwealth is an entirely different place. And just my campaign experience needs to be informed by what's happening on the ground in Virginia. And then at the same time, I'm able to bring an outside point of view to what is happening to those races. I'm able to take a step back. And I think that whether it's the other national orgs that are engaged and our local partners, we've just figured out through hard work and lots of communication, the best way to do that. Whether it's the C4 table or just kind of all of our individual conversations, it's one of the best and most effective and efficient kind of national state partnership operations that I think is operating right now in the country.
Yeah, I would echo what Andrew said. I mean, as a state-based person, I'm always preaching that if you're going to come into a place, like, get to know the folks in that place, because there are certain things that people are aware of, and they know the political landscape and the conditions in a way that, you know, could be very helpful and insightful. And then also at the end of the day, you know, we're here to stay. So, and so when people come in from out of area and then they're not there to stay, sometimes we're left dealing with the consequences. And I will say that, you know, once upon a time, maybe about a decade ago, we dealt with some not so great consequences that we had to clean up. And I echo Andrew. I think over the last several cycles, there's been such high level coordination. I mean, the fact that Sister District is hosting this call, right, and bringing us and giving us this opportunity to share with all of your folks across the country just shows how both national and state and local folks are really understanding that this partnership really matters, and it's quite frankly how we win when we're sort of, you know, on the same page and working towards the same collective goal. I know after the Georgia, after November in Georgia, and everybody was excited about the Georgia runoffs, and it was like, oh, we're going to go down to Georgia. And when Stacey Abrams was like, wait, right, and when Lauren Gerward was like, wait, let us tell you what we need. That was really, really significant. I was eager to like just get on a flight and come on down, but I waited. And so when Lauren and Stacey called and were like, can you actually, yeah, we need you for 6 weeks. Can you come do this? And I was like, oh, yes. But because it's, people know their communities best, and they know what capacities they need to pull in order to make things work. So I would say that the infrastructure is there, and we've worked collectively so hard to get it to where it is right now. And it's just very exciting that it's almost not strictly plug and play, right? But like people know where their entry ramps are and what relationships exist and what needs to be built.
And I'm just going to post into the chat an incredible op-ed that Tram wrote in 2019 that was published in the New York Times that I have read over and over. I read it sometimes I'll just read it just to remember it and to revisit it. And the point that you make so clearly and eloquently in this op-ed, Tram, is that it didn't happen overnight in Virginia, right? And the infrastructure that you're talking about, where all the different pieces can work together and find a lane and support each other, took decades of work. And we are all the beneficiaries of that. And you know, we work on the hard side directly with campaigns for that reason, in part, is that we know our candidates know what they need. You know, and that's a place where we can plug in and be an extension arm of the campaign strategy and all the rest, because we know that in Virginia, we have such incredible partners on the ground who know the rest and who are working on it. And so I encourage everyone to read Tram's op-ed about, you know, how Virginia happened. And the bottom line is it didn't happen overnight. And that is literally the tagline for the article. But it really did take decades of coordination and work. And as Andrew said, trial and error, right? Just conversations, one-offs. You try something, you try it again. And it really has come together in such an incredible way in Virginia. And you know, we're so proud to be partners along on this journey. We have a few more minutes, and it looks like we have some great questions in the Q&A. So I'll tee this one up. Maybe Tram and whoever else would like to jump in afterwards. That, you know, there are some. You mentioned that there are so many policies, and I think Joshua, you mentioned you passed all the things that you campaigned on. What is next? What is the sort of vanguard for the policies and the messages that you're looking to get out there this year and to run on and to campaign on and to build that momentum around?
I mean, I think the reality is that, you know, Virginia and the rest of the country, frankly, we're wrestling still with the COVID-19 crisis, a pandemic, and how to recover from this. Not only just from a healthcare perspective, right, making sure folks are getting vaccinated and are being treated, et cetera, but also from an economic and social perspective, right? Our economic institutions and our social institutions, how do we come out of this stronger and more together? And I think, you know, I've been in a lot of spaces where the conversation in various places at the national level and across states, whether blue states or red states, is, you know, what is the approach out of this? Are we going to revert back to what happened at the last recession, right, where economic austerity tended to be the answer? Or are we going to lean in a little bit more and actually think about investing more in infrastructure and more into the social safety net and rethinking our social contract? I think that those are big conversations, and we're not going to necessarily address all of that in like a 6-month election cycle. But I do think that it is the start of a conversation, and it's going to be a very important conversation, especially as other states are looking to see what is happening across the country. I spoke to friends in Minnesota who sat down with the governor and leadership there, and they were like, what are other states doing? And so if you think about Virginia and our position, we are a southern state. We are a newly blue state, purple-ish even. And if we are able to lean in and run on some really bold progressive messages and still win, that actually shows the country, right? And all of us here that we are on the right path. And this is how we actually move forward as a state, as a Commonwealth, and as a nation. But, you know, like, we have to be real too. I mean, this pandemic is still top of mind. We're nearing the 1-year anniversary of when things started to really shut down in this country. And so there's going to be some big issues that we're going to have to grapple with. But we have, to Andrew's point earlier, we have examples. We have very clear, distinct examples of what this Democratic trifecta can do and has done for you. Preventing evictions, you know, increasing access to healthcare at the state level. And so those are things that we can really run on and really drive home.
Yeah, I think that was all really, really good. And I saw a message from Catherine White who talked about messaging. We have to make sure, and in our private meetings, our leadership always tells us, we're in the majority now. We are the leaders now. And so we have to act like it. We don't have to do, you know, some of the things we used to do when we were in the minority, you know, trying to do this, trying to do that, trying to get attention. We lead. We have the majority and we control the narrative. And I think that we have been so used to being in the minority, we're getting used to putting on our big britches now. And we need to learn how to, as we say it, we need to learn how to flex. We have that authority, we have the power, we are in the majority. Flex and control that narrative. And that is going to be so key as we move into this campaign season. Republicans are going to try to hit us on every single thing. They're going to flip the narrative, they're going to try and change it. We control this narrative. This is what we did. This is how we were successful. This is how you continue to make it through the pandemic. We can control that narrative. And that's what I'm really excited to see, that we can do that. I had a brain fart. I was going to go somewhere else about what was mentioned, but I think that's very key. Controlling the narrative is going to be cool. And as we move forward, you know, we're going to win the election in November. We also, as we get comfortable with our majority, we can now move forward with more progressive agendas. There were certain things that maybe we were afraid to move on because we didn't know how it was going to be received or the implications in Virginia. But now that we have a little bit of comfortability in our majority, there are still more progressive things we need to do. And so, yes, I know there are great things that we can do. I even had some bills that didn't make it through the session that I can come back and pull back when we get back in January. You know, there's still some great things we have yet to accomplish, and we can do them once we've shown Virginia that we can lead, and Virginia shows us that they are still behind us.
That is the perfect coda to this panel. You have all done the incredible hard work of putting Virginia in that position to where it can lead. It can lead in the South and it can lead across the country. You know, hearing Tram, you talk about the fact that the voting rights bill in Virginia is even better than in, you know, a state like California, right? And each of you has played such a part in putting Virginia in this position. And, you know, Delegate Cole, I love that. You're just getting started, right? Much has been accomplished, but this is just the beginning of the new era, right? And so I'm so grateful to each of you for your hard work in Virginia, not just this year, but over the years. And we are here at Sister District incredibly fired up to do our part and offer the support and that we can to you all in the incredible work that you're doing. So thank you so much. And with that, I'll turn things back over to Lala to close us out of today's programming. And thank you so much again to our panelists.